Now, the unemployment rate has decreased by 0.7 percentage points. The formal sector employment increased by 287,000 jobs and the informal sector by 29,000. For some reaction, let's bring in Labour consultant Tony Healy, who joins us this morning. Tony, a very good morning to you. Your reaction to the quarterly labour force survey, obviously, now, more jobs, more people being employed. How do you evaluate it?
Good morning, Tommy. I think, we discuss these numbers 4 times a year after each quarter. And unfortunately, we really discuss the same thing, which is that there's a 0.5 percentage movement there. There's a 0.5 percentage movement somewhere else. But we still sit at this extremely high unemployment number where there are 8 million unemployed, and we're really not making any inroads into this very high number.
What do we need to do? As you say, we talk about this every time the survey comes out. But what we really need as a country are sustainable jobs, sustainable employment. What do we need to actually start seeing those results that are not going to be fluctuating at such levels?
Well, I think what you find, I think what's interesting for me is, in fairness to the ANC, they did inherit a high unemployment number in 1994 that was north of 20%. But if you look at the years after that, where there was a government of national unity, that unemployment number actually decreased every year until the end of the government of national unity. And then from then onwards, it's just skyrocketed. We can do things to address this, but to your point, there are a number of issues which I think many of us would be aware of. If you're looking we need to grow our way out of an unemployment crisis. But it's difficult to grow when, we don't have reliable electricity supply. We don't have efficient ports and harbors. We don't have the security that we need. We don't have the rail structure that we need. So it really comes down to ensuring that we make South Africa investable, which it isn't at the moment.
So looking at the numbers and where this growth actually comes from, it comes mainly from the formal sector. What is that an indicator of? Because oftentimes it's the informal sector where we are seeing the rise in employment. What does this indicate?
Well, look, I think it does. It reminds us, Tommy, that as much as there is, there are employment opportunities in the informal sector, and there certainly are. It still is the formal sector that we rely upon to grow jobs, to create employment. I think what's eye-catching for me in these numbers is, for example, the significant reduction in jobs in manufacturing and mining. Now, you will know that in years gone by, they were the industries that were the bedrock of employment for South Africans, and they have, over time, that's significantly been whittled away, and that's almost suggests a de-industrialization of the South African economy, which is worrying, because both mining and manufacturing, perhaps to a lesser degree, are quite labor intensive, and jobs in those sectors have been significantly cut over the last 20 years or so.
Does that have anything to do with what you mentioned earlier on, the problems that we've been having as far as Eskom is concerned, the transportation issues and how that affects the pipeline in the chain, especially when it comes to mining and manufacturing, because then distribution is a very key aspect of those businesses. And so if we're having problems with Transnet and the rail, that then trickles on and does actually affect the performance of the business, and that then inevitably affects the number of people that you can employ or that you need to run a much scaled down version of your business and operation.
Yeah, I think it does, and I think it has to, because how do you distribute your goods more easily? For example, so I think that has a huge part to play. I mean, I think there's another issue, and if we have to be objective and fair on this, is that worldwide central banks are, interest rates are high. That's to try and address inflation. And that then has an impact on stifling growth. At the end of the day, we do need to grow our way out of this unemployment crisis. And sitting at a kind of 1.5% growth number, which we're looking at the moment, is nowhere near what we're going to need. We're going to need north of 4%, north of 5% to begin to eat into the very high number. For me, I don't know if we look closely enough at the fact that this really is a national crisis. We've almost become used to this and accustomed to this as the new normal. And it shouldn't be, because it has so many socio-economic implications for the country that, if I was pulling the levers in government, I'd be taking more drastic steps in terms of policy structure, to address the kind of factors that are inhibiting our ability to eat into this very high unemployment number.
Tony, when we look at the Western Cape, they really are an outlier as far as performance is concerned in the unemployment realm. What is making that work for them? What are they doing right? What are the best practices that perhaps the other provinces can glean from the Western Cape in this regard?
Yeah, you make an excellent point. I'm speaking to you from Cape Town, and the Western Cape has an unemployment figure which is almost half of some of the other provinces. It's certainly the lowest in the country. And you asked the important question, why is that the case? Well, I think the Western Cape does function. Government does function fairly well in this part of the world. Infrastructure is good. There are ways of trying to offset the impact of load shedding, for example, from time to time. Security is reasonably good. So I think the Western Cape works from a kind of government point of view, and I think that instills a degree of confidence. So I don't think we should be surprised that we see what we do, which is that the Western Cape unemployment number is significantly lower than the rest of the country. Look, it's not great. I mean, it's still sitting at 27%, but it's a lot lower than some of the other provinces, which are sitting in the mid-40s.